Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we are talking with two members of the Fairfax County Public School Board. Joining me on my far left is McLaughlin. She is the school board member representing the Braddock district, and here in the center is Derenak Kaufax, who is representing the Lee district. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here.
You're welcome. We're pleased to be here.
Well, I love the school board. I frequently have school board members on here because I think it's something everybody in the community should care about, the quality of our schools. And Fairfax County is the 10th largest school district in the nation. The budget for the school board takes the majority of the county's budget. So this is an opportunity for people to hear about some of the programs the two of you are working on. But I would like to I'll start with Megan about, in 2012, you both started in 2012 on the school board, but did you just wake up one day and say, I think I'll run for the school board, or was there something else in your journey?
There was. I appreciate you asking the question. So it was actually 4 years earlier that I was a parent in the public schools with 3 young boys and had been a former Georgetown undergraduate admissions officer, but also a social worker and a counselor in the juvenile court system. So I'd always been interested in youth issues. And it was during my time as a PTA president that I started to learn more about Fairfax County Schools policies related to high school grading. And I was very concerned about our students being able to compete in the college admissions process. And so I ended up co-founding a group called Fair Grade, and we were able to change a policy that had been in place for almost 30 years that had non-standard grading practices that really did hamper kids for college admissions and scholarships and NCAA qualifications, and so eligibility. And what I learned from that was that the school system had sort of developed a bit of a mindset that because it's such a high-performing school that they really didn't need to worry about where the community was on it. They had all the answers. And from my perspective, with the group of parents that we became as advocates, we had a lot of experience in the field and brought a lot of data to the conversation, and didn't find the school system had the same. And so we got involved in a couple of other advocacy issues like student discipline and honors courses that were needed in the curriculum. And it was through those various advocacy experiences that I suddenly realized that we needed to have a school board that was more responsive, more engaged with the community, and a school division that looked at our community as an asset. And so that my seat in Braddock was up for an open seat, and so I decided at that point that perhaps I could take this advocacy and passion, but a drive for data-driven decision-making and serve. And so here we are 7 years later in my second term, and it's just every day continues to be such an enjoyable experience. But I don't doubt for a second that it's such a gift to be able to serve my community and to bring their voices to the conversation. And I do hope it's made us a stronger school system in general.
And so Braddock District, for people who are not familiar with the terminology of magisterial districts in the county, Braddock includes what areas?
Thank you. So Braddock is a nice long rectangular district that starts right inside the Beltway at Annandale High School, and then you continue west, and it will encompass the neighborhoods that feed into the Lake Braddock High School, Robinson High School, and Woodson High School, and a little bit of West Springfield High School. So all the elementary schools, the middle schools that feed into those high schools, a strong percentage of them will reside in the Braddock district. But there is overlapping. Our school districts don't align with these voter magisterial districts. So for Lake Braddock, for example, 50% of the students who attend Lake Braddock Secondary School live in my district, and the other 50% live in the Springfield district. So we usually try to tell our families that if you're not sure who your school board member is by magisterial district, who's their supervisor, and because we align exactly with our supervisor. So in my case, it's Supervisor John Cook.
Well, that's a good rule of thumb.
Yes.
And so Tammy, you are in the Lee District, and you can kind of help people understand the Lee District and also what brought you into service on the school board.
All right, thank you. Lee District starts at Lee High School. It has Edison High School and Hayfield Secondary Schools. Those are the three main high schools, and again, as Megan said, all of the middle schools and elementary schools that feed in. Lee High School is over by Springfield Mall, and Edison and Hayfield are in the heart of an area we call Rose Hill. I also have a large percentage of children who live in Lee District but attend other schools, and the two other high school pyramids that they attend are West Potomac, and that's in the Mount Vernon District, and Mount Vernon High School, which is a little bit confusing.
Yeah, confusing a little.
But when a large percentage of children who live in Lee, it's because of the boundaries that Megan was talking about. It's a little convoluted the way different magisterial districts are compared to voting districts, and so you can live in Lee but attend high school in Mount Vernon. So, and my journey, a little bit different than Megan's. I was a stay-at-home mom after I had one of those 60-hour-a-week Washingtonian careers.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, I was the vice president of marketing and communications for a trade association, and then I took some time home to stay with my children. And so what does a woman do when she's used to that schedule? Well, she gets involved in boards and committees, and, you know. And
you give back to the community in a non-paid way.
Exactly. So because of that, and my husband was a Little League coach and an AAU basketball coach, we were well known in the community. And when a seat opened up on the Fairfax County School Board in Lee District, I was approached by some community members who were saying, this is something we think you would be great at. And I was very naive to the process. I was like, do I submit a resume? What do I do? And they're like, no, youngster, it is an election. And so when I started on this path, you know, I think that's important to know, because you don't have to be a policymaker, a policy wonk, or someone who has been an activist. You can be someone who's been giving back to the community, as you said, in a non-paid way, or just active, and you can start your political journey like I did. So my daughter was in 5th grade when I started, and my son was in 9th, and it was a great civics lesson. I found great support in the community that I was living in, and so now, 7 years later, both children are graduates of Fairfax County Public School. One is a college graduate working as a reporter, and another is a college sophomore. And so the journey has been long and wonderful, and I too, as Megan said, have been honored to be part of this, learned so much, and feel like it's been a place where I've been able to make changes, and I look forward to continuing to do that.
So one of the things people think of the school board rather quixotically as an entry-level elected position, and I kind of thought that too until I started talking to school board members about the number of hours that is required to be on the school board. It is not just school board meetings.
That's
not
correct.
at all.
No, not at all. Each of our magisterial districts have probably a little over 100,000 residents. And so there are a lot of people who, especially when their children are in the school system itself, have a lot of questions, concerns, and they turn to us as their elected voice. And so every single day we're fielding emails coming in from our families and people asking us for guidance or asking us to help them as they try to navigate this very large school system, which as many people know, we're 10th largest in the United States. We're almost to 190,000 students and a $3 billion annual operating budget. So it is a massive enterprise. And in fact, with our employees, I think we're now up to 28,000 full-time employees, one of the largest employers in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So the work we do on the school board is complex. It's definitely more than just a couple of business meetings a month. And really, since Tammy and I joined in the last 7 years, thankfully there's been such a movement toward more collaborative work with our Board of Supervisors. So a lot of joint meetings with them as well, and some that we'll be talking about later this evening.
It is a part-time position, but several of us do it as our full-time work and our passion.
Part-time, it's like we have a part-time legislature. It's kind of like, ooh, I think we need to kind of help people understand that part-time isn't what we think.
Exactly.
It's not what it used to be.
It's not what it used to be, because a lot of the things you're tackling are huge, and there's a lot of players. And you're right, one of the programs we're going to talk about is a very huge program that involves a lot of people. And so in addition to the fact that you have meetings with the school board and then the regularly scheduled school board meetings that people attend on Thursdays, very close to the studio, there's just a lot of work that goes into reading and giving feedback and going to the meetings and actually coming up with these policies.
Right. Well, and also it's interesting you put it in those words, because a lot of times people think that's what we are, we're policymakers, but like the Board of Supervisors, we're much more than that. We are the governing body, and so we're not just writing policy or revising policy, but we're supposed to provide the oversight. So we have work sessions multiple times a month as well. Always a standing Monday work session once a month that will go for generally 8 to 9 hours long. And we're having to help provide that governance to the superintendent of what are we doing operationally. So much more goes into it than just the policies that we draft and put into place. Really having the responsibility of reading the monitoring reports you've described and the other staff reports on where are we on any variety of issues that we know are facing our system. One thing I wanted to note, Catherine, is that when my husband's parents moved here in 1971 to the Braddock district, as it turned out, my husband was only 5 at the time, and their 3 sons proceeded through the Fairfax County School System. And at that time, our poverty rate was at about 3%. It's now almost reached 30% of our families in the schools. And that's very shocking for many Fairfax County families, especially those who've lived here for a very long time. And so in terms of the complexity and the challenges we face, we can't be looking at one-size-fits-all model for how we provide an education to all of our students. And so that too has made our work really challenging but exciting. And later, as Tammy and I talk, even our districts are so different. I only have one Title I school, and the vast majority of Tammy's are
Title I.
Yeah, so
we, as Megan said, we are the 4th wealthiest county in the nation, but we have deep pockets of poverty. When I started on this board, 40% of my schools were Title I. Now 78% of my schools are Title I. In 7 years, it is a huge change, and it is something that is why the Successful Children and Youth Policy team, that was one of the reasons it was initiated. But we are doing so much in the school system to address the needs of these children, and we're making certain that we give them everything that they need through an equity lens.
Well, I can't wait. When we come back from this break, we are going to be talking to both Megan and Tammy about the SCIPT program. It's one of several initiatives, but this one touches on many, many things that are impacting our schools in every district. So please join us after this break.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
I got a creak in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. All of the ones get on. Very sad, no more love. All that I could do was remember you. You know I usually say no, but if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more. And
It's a big responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. I know, it's huge.
And the salary.
Oh my god, yes. I
Right?
mean, like, I was about to move in with my parents, and right before, so this saved me.
I really believe in you, you know?
Thank you. It's nice to hear that from someone.
These are cool. Did you, what did you?
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. We are talking with two members of the Fairfax County Public School Board. We are talking with Megan McLaughlin of the Braddock District and Tamara Derenak Kaufax of the Lee District. Thank you, ladies, again for being here. So when we wrapped up our last segment, we were talking about a program called SKIPT, but it's an acronym for a very long title.
Yes.
But this is it was established in 2013, or at least it started in 2013. I'm sure in all those years it has morphed somewhat.
It has, and it even started prior to that as an idea. So when Megan and I both got on the school board in 2012, we decided we really needed to meet with our funding body. And apparently that had not ever been done before, strangely enough. No joint retreat had ever been done. There were joint meetings, but not a joint retreat where you actually get to know each other, sit down, break bread, and talk about what are your strategic objectives, Board of Supervisors, and what are we as a new board that's just coming together, because we had 6 new members at that time. What are our objectives and where do we want to go? So there were a couple areas of commonality that emerged, and one was pre-K. We all knew that the value of pre-K was there, but we discovered that there was a waiting list of over 1,000 children who were not getting that high quality pre-K experience that they need. There were prior to sitting on the school board, I sat on the Child Care Advisory Council, which is one of the advisory boards that deals with the county's child care plans and what they are. And when I sat on there, I learned so much about the value of pre-K, where we have study after study showing that for every dollar that you invest in quality, high quality pre-K programming, you can save somewhere between $10 and $15 later on in a child's educational career. Why? Because they don't need remediation. Right. They are coming to school, they don't have attendance issues. Perhaps they are not dealing with the juvenile justice system because they're not skipping school to do something that they shouldn't be and then inadvertently getting into trouble. All of these things combined make pre-K one of the best investments we can have. It's always a sexy thing to talk about. We need to do it, but we haven't done it with fidelity or the way that we need to. So I wish I could say, because that was one of the initiatives that we all agreed needed to happen, and I wish I could say that the SKIPT committee was formed the next week. But as it is in kind of bureaucratic organizations, it took a little while longer. So about 1.5 years later, SKIPT was formed. And during that time, and there was a lot of negotiation back and forth. What should it look like? Who should the members be on? So we needed policymakers on that, because you needed the policymakers at the table, not other people who were going to report back to us and give us half of the answers. You needed that. So we had 2 school board members and 2 Board of Supervised members. You needed people who were out there with the Health and Human Services Division. We have lots of people there. We have the police. We have members of the community, the Fairfax County government, as well as members of the school board, people who are in the trenches every day knowing what our children need. And so after 1.5 years, SKIPT was formed in May of 2013, not only dealing with child care issues, but we also took on issues like racial and social equity, the attendance issues, behavioral human health, how to keep kids, make sure they are getting what they need in mental health resources, and now we're starting with community schools. And Megan was you were in one of the initial
Yes.
SKIPT group, and so Megan can talk a little bit about the early history of the group, and then we'll touch on all of these areas and where we are today.
Perfect.
Yes, so Tammy's correct. When we first finally came together as a policy team, I was one of the 2 school board members and have remained the only one who's on the original group, Janie Strauss joined me for the first 2 years, and then Tammy joined me for the last 3 years. Kathy Hudgens, Supervisor Kathy Hudgens, and Supervisor Jeff McKay also are founding members on the policy team. And so, as Tammy noted, we had the executives at the highest branches part of this policy team. So whether they were the assistant superintendents in charge of instruction or special services, whether they were in charge of the court system like Robert Birmingham, who runs the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court, the liaison from the police department, who oversees our school resource officers, as well as one of the deputies of the police department, 2 deputies from the county executive's office. So really the goal of saying, rather than operating county services, school services in stovepipes, looking at that in order to have successful children and youth in Fairfax County, we've got to figure out how do we better coordinate our services, the wraparound services to help children and families. And so some of the early initiatives, like Tammy mentioned, it wasn't just simply the early childhood education, but it was also looking at the disparities in our juvenile justice system,
Yes.
As well as the disparities within our discipline statistics. And that was important for me, especially because I had served in the Fairfax County Juvenile Court as a family counselor, working on divorce custody as well as delinquency cases, and had come to appreciate how Fairfax County government was looking at diversion and looking at ways to give children more restorative justice approaches, but we weren't doing so well on the school side. So
this is interesting because, anybody who watches this show now, I've been talking about community schools since 2014.
Yes.
And one of the pillars of the community school system is not just the wraparound services, it's restorative justice and restorative justice practices in the classroom.
Yes.
And so I know there is the Alternative Accountability Program, the AAP program. I've actually had those folks on the show before to talk about the AAP program. It seems like there's been a lot of initiatives, and I applaud the county for trying things that haven't been tried before.
correct.
Right? I mean, it
Yes.
seems to me, and I think I give all credit to a school board who is willing to not only be open to new things, but to do the hard work
Yes.
to take ideas and make them things that are actionable. Like things
Right.
that you can actually say, let's try a pilot program, or let's put this into place and then measure it. I love how you both are into data. Like, what does the data say?
Exactly. And
Exactly.
I'm glad you framed it that way, because part of what we've learned on the SCIP team is being able to look at other jurisdictions around the United States. And that was sort of the early years of our policy team, was saying, even though we are a fantastic county, there's so much to learn from other jurisdictions, even those that might be slightly smaller and have the ability to sort of incubate ideas. And so that was one of the things that we looked at everywhere from Portland to Minneapolis, where they were doing very intentional work around successful children and youth. And that's helped informed a lot of our early work on SCIP. And since that time, Fairfax County's Board of Supervisors and the school board, we recognize that in order to address these individual areas of concern, we needed to have a comprehensive approach and a comprehensive commitment. And that's what created the One Fairfax resolution,
Right.
Where both counties said, we understand that the only way every child can be successful is that we really look at opportunity gaps and ensure that there is equity for all. And from that resolution and commitment, we then developed the policy that's to drive really each and every action that the county takes in its services it delivers. And it's really amazing when you reflect on the 5 years of work that's been done with SCIP, just how much we've been able to bring the county in a direction that reflects what we know research shows helps students and families to be far more successful, even when there are those socioeconomic gaps.
Right, and I think, lots of people, there's a cartoon out there, if you will, and it shows the difference between equity and equality. And it's the children standing on a box looking through, and giving people equality is giving everyone the same thing.
The same size
the
box,
same size
even
box,
though you're a different height.
Exactly. So you give everyone the same thing. But what we are striving for is to make sure that we give every child what they need. And that is looking at every policy that we put out there, all of our initiatives through an equity lens. When I talked about earlier the programming, the retreat, where of our boards had strategic plans at that time. Neither of our boards had these initiatives where you were looking at things. It was kind of like a scattershot approach. And I think we've made such progress in the last few years about ensuring that we have a strategic focus to everything we do. And that's why when you look at this one Fairfax policy, which really is a social and racial equity policy, and in the simplest terms, we want to meet each child at the door where their needs are and provide them with the services in order to make them grow and thrive in our public schools.
And we have a very diverse population in our county, and that's one of the things that makes this county very rich.
Exactly.
Not everybody views diversity the same way, and there are a lot of people who talk about the cost of having students who are learning English as a second language, but this diversity reflects this country, and it reflects the fact that we're next to Washington, D.C., and we live in a metropolitan area. And I think the county has done a good job in welcoming all kinds of families to the county and trying to meet them where they are, to figure out what it is to make these kids successful. We're a nation of immigrants.
Absolutely.
Right.
We're a nation of immigrants.
One of the things that I saw happening in my schools, one of my schools in particular, Lee High School, is we were getting a large amount of children in their teens who had real deficits in education. They were not completely literate in their home language. They were not speaking English. They had numeracy issues. And so bringing that to the attention of the whole board, because not every board member was seeing that in their district. And what we did, we put a newcomers program together. One time when I was at the National School Boards Association, there was a program in Texas. And I approached our superintendent at the time, who was from Texas, and I said, we really need programming like this, because this is not, what we're doing is not successful. Kids are not graduating in a timely rate. They are taking credits that are not verified, and they're getting discouraged. What can we do? So I brought that then back to the school board.
Well, we were in that seminar together.
We were, that's
Yeah.
right, we were
Yeah.
in that seminar together, and I brought it back to the school board. Megan and I did,
Yeah.
and what we did is we did a 2-year crosswalk about what was we doing right, what were other school systems doing right, and we started with 2 pilot programs, and now it is in probably 15 schools, making certain, and it's in all of our high schools, but 15 schools with additional counselors, additional support to make sure these kids are getting what they need, and what we see is remarkable progress. These children are now getting verified credits, they are graduating in a more timely manner, and they want to come to school. They're not feeling like they're in somewhere where they're not making any progress, so why should I come?
I know, and we were talking before the show even started about SOLs that measure progress. You know, there's a movement to like just eliminate SOLs, and I think you made a good point about good tests measure the right things.
Yes.
Right.
So when we come back from this break, we are going to be talking with Megan McLaughlin and Tammy Kaufax, and so you should join us after the break.
I surrender.
All right, pal. Get ready for the day, buddy.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
What's up?
Do we have a gun?
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made this vacation happen.
Double points with every purchase?
Cleverly merging promotions.
Love it.
Cross-referencing travel sites. And booking all your flights with those...
Vouchers. I got us bumped.
They were like, oh. But now they're like... Aloha. You aced this vacation. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
I tried Oxy at a couple of parties. I thought I had it under control. I didn't know it'd be this addictive. I didn't know how far I'd go to get more.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth. what to expect when you're expecting
Like here.
a teenager.
Today, I'm going to show you how to teen-proof your home. First step, hide the car keys. Preferably somewhere they would never look. Challenges will come up. Be ready for them. Hi, honey.
Ready for the... Mom, you don't use mannequins in the mannequin challenge.
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. Joining me tonight are two members of the Fairfax County Public School Board, Megan McLaughlin from the Braddock District and Tamara Derenak. I got that right every time. Kaufax.
It's a hard one.
I just call her Tammy from the Lee District. And so while we were on break, Martha from Mount Vernon said we had talked a little bit about pre-K programs and the concentration on pre-K programs. And what she wanted to know is, what are you doing about school readiness for children?
Well, we have made lots of progress from those initial days where we knew it was the right thing to do, but what do we do? And one of the things, the waiting list I mentioned was about 1,000 kids, and now we are cutting that in half. We are still not where we need to be. But in Fairfax County, you can get your pre-K education in 3 ways, right? You can be center-based, and that's either via the schools or Fairfax County facilities. And through that, there are systems of funding. You have FESEP, you have the VPI, Virginia Pre-K Initiative, you have Head Start monies, and so we have that bucket. Then we also have another area where you have licensed home daycare providers, and Fairfax County does amazing work.
Amazing. Since 1974, the Office for Children.
The Office for Children is housed with amazing, compassionate people, and that's where when I talked about the board that I sat on before, I got to know them. These people are so committed to ensuring that if you put your child in a home that's a licensed daycare provider, your child is going to get everything they need to be pre-K ready. And then of course, there's the families that still stay at home with their kids and are able to do that. But the one thing I think that people might not know about are some of the initiatives that the school has. If your child, say for some reason, wasn't able to get into a program, or what can we do? We have a Bridge to K program, and what that is it is a program that provides intensive services for those kids who have not had, it's a 3-week program at the end of the summer where parents can send their children to a Fairfax County public school where they learn all of those things, like how to get in line, how to sit in a circle,
the
put your
things.
hands.
It's not academic.
Exactly.
It's how do you interact in a social setting.
Basic things. And we find that these kiddos go from I don't know what to do to being absolutely ready in a condensed period of time. We also have program, it's something that if you are an at-home mom, it's free. It's called the Hippie program. And this program provides free once a week programming from October to May for parents if you want to know how to engage your child in reading activities. What about nutrition? Things like that. That program is available for you as well through the Fairfax County Public Schools. And we also have school readiness teams. And school readiness teams are county people from the Office of Children, principals and things like that who go out during the year for these families that they know may be in the community but are not getting pre-K services yet. And what they do is they help. This is what you need to do to register. This is what you need to be getting your child ready to learn. And so all of these programs combined with all of the opportunities to be in a pre-K system are something that we are very, very excited about. So I think a lot of people don't know about this, but you can always call FCPS and find out about them, because these are things that are getting our kids up to speed for if they are not in a pre-K program right now. We are always talking, we are passionate with our funding bodies from the state level and from the county level to ensure that we're getting the funds that we need. I know our current governor in Virginia is passionate about pre-K, and we're hoping for additional funding from there because ideally universal pre-K is the way we would love to go and love to be. But until then, and also the schools have started, we have opened, I think in the last 6 years, somewhere between 25 and 30 classrooms in the schools. Now we have facilities challenges, but because we don't have the space for them everywhere. But every time something is opening up, we look at it with a pre-K lens and say, can we fit in pre-K classrooms there? Like the old Mount Vernon High School, which is being repurposed right now from the renters that used to have it. Right now, we are looking at having pre-K classrooms in there and making certain, not everything's finalized, but we are making, because that is one area where pre-K classrooms are needed. And so everything is being looked at with the lens. Library programs, how can we do kinds of parent, we call them like, they're parenting programs where kids and their parents can come in and they do station work. And this is also like, it's like a camp for parents and their kids. And so that's another program that we're doing in libraries around the community. So lots and lots of things that we're doing.
That's amazing. Half these things I've never heard of.
Like
the library programs. What a great use of library space.
Exactly. That's what we figured. It was one day we were blue skying and we're like, look, there's space available and let's do this.
It's fantastic.
And the key to these initiatives and part of a real commitment on the part of Skip is that as we look around the country to identify where there's been sort of best practice success and the data that shows that the initiatives are actually achieving what we would hope for, which is students to improve and to close those opportunity gaps and the achievement gaps. And whether it was the new school program that was adopted and taken from Texas, the preschool initiatives where we're looking at not just expanding whatever services we have, but having those experts in pre-K going and visiting the daycare facilities here and around Fairfax County to also ensure that for even those families who aren't in a specific school or a county program, but that those daycare providers also know what can we do to have children ready for school. And then having a data dashboard so that the county leaders can be looking at the programs themselves and continuously improve. Because in the end, if we can have good intentions, but the product itself, how we're actually delivering the services isn't achieving the outcome, then we're not meeting those children's needs. And so, as you noted earlier, it's something that Tammy and I, the board of supervisors, the school board, both the county executive, the superintendent, everyone recognizes that it's not just good intentions, but effective programming. And that's what makes this work so exciting, is looking and identifying what will actually help us achieve these goals.
I think it's amazing. And when you talk about a big county, and each district, your districts are very different, and the families that you serve are very different, but best practices are best practices. And it's about the availability of these services.
Yes. Absolutely. And one of the other things that Tammy and I had hoped to touch upon when talking about the successful children and youth work is about behavioral health. Yes. Because as we know, we're seeing record numbers both nationally within the Commonwealth of Virginia and sadly right here in Fairfax County, where in our youth surveys, students are reporting higher levels of anxiety, depression, and stress that we didn't see just a generation or two ago. And wanting to be able to say, in order for a child to come into a building, sit in a classroom seat, learn from their teacher and from their classmates, they need to ensure that they have that behavioral health model where we know that they're ready to learn. And so that is something where the school division and the county services looked again around the country and said, all right, what are we doing to be able to help deliver services in the classrooms? Because a lot of times families can't take their child out for every appointment they need. They may not even recognize and know to look for those signs. And so there's been a multi-pronged approach bringing substance abuse counselors and a piloted approach. We're going to be expanding on that, but bringing them back into the schools so that when we look at the youth survey responses, the number of students who are experimenting or using substance abuse often to self-medicate depression and anxiety, how do we identify them? How do we get services for them? Part of the plan now is that we've got services where 6 to 8 outpatient therapy sessions for students that they can be screened for and directed to a provider who's willing to contract with the county government. I mean, those are ways in which we're saying beyond the 3 R's that they always used to talk about, but the core learning that you might test them in academics, but it's, again, how do we raise successful children? And that's going to include those behavioral health services. And so that's an area too that we've seen some progress in, but also just a lot of prevention programs, also helping to raise awareness, students knowing who to turn to if they're not just concerned about themselves but their classmates. And those are the things that, again, through the data we're finding more and more in the survey responses that students are better recognizing it with themselves and their classmates and knowing where to turn. So,
some of the programs, so I had the Turning Point program on here not all that long ago. They were talking about mental health first aid and trying to teach that, you know, and you know, you teach kids CPR or you teach them basic first aid, but we're not destigmatizing mental or behavioral health issues by saying that there are things that you need to look for in yourself that are depression, anxiety, and what is appropriate and when you need to ask for help. And then with your fellow students, and when you need to recognize not that you can solve the problem or you're responsible for them, but where do you turn and who do you tell?
And exactly, and I'm so proud again of the community that we live in, that through our PTAs, our Parent-Teacher Association groups, along with other nonprofit organizations that are really dedicated to trying reducing suicide, preventing suicide, have been funding a lot of what you just described, this mental health first aid classes, and really helping young people, especially at the high school level where the maturity is there, of putting them through those first aid classes and helping them again identify their classmates in need. And that's a lot of change even since our children came through.
One initiative that we have a mental health and wellness conference now. It's an annual one, and we bring experts from around the country to keynote, to talk. We had panelists from all over the country in breakout groups. We had a separate track for student leaders themselves. Anybody can attend with their parents, and it is every year I go and I learn something. It is just amazing how to do work-life balance, school-life balance. What can you do? We did also initiate a crisis line because we found lots of kids didn't want to pick up the phone. So we have we have a texting where you can text for a friend or text and you are connected to a mental health official and to make sure, do you need help? How can we help? How can we make this better for you?
I had no idea. I love the idea of texting. The Trevor Projects offers a texting for suicide prevention. No idea that this was offered through the county. So when we come back from this break, we still have information that you need to know, so join us.
This is the story of a boy who is very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. It made him feel uncomfortable. One day, he found out he had something called autism. His family got him help, and slowly, he learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
Being a dad is an adventure full of special moments.
A cruise?
Drive! unexpected moments.
I got this.
And even awkward moments.
Okay, Dad, thank you.
But every moment you spend with your kids, even the smallest moments, can make the biggest impact on your child's life. So take a moment to be a dad today.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Catherine Reed. We are talking with two members of the Fairfax County School Board. We are talking with Megan McLaughlin of the Braddock District and Tamara Derenak Kaufax of the Lee District. So ladies, let's talk about my favorite subject, which is community schools, which I have been talking about year after year after year after year.
Yes.
And we actually have two community school models.
Just beginning.
This year. I'm so excited.
And we are very excited too. You know, community schools at their simplest level are schools that are combined, you know, academics with all of the health and human services options that are available, and making certain parents are engaged, bringing them to the table. And so through our policy team making agenda, we were able to secure a grant from the United Way, and the United Way has a 2-year grant. And then we looked at schools. They wanted to be in a middle school, and so Whitman Middle School was chosen, and that's in the Mount Vernon district. But going back, I have kids in that school.
Overlap.
Yes, overlap. And then Mount Vernon Woods Elementary School. So when you look at those two schools, their needs are very different, but they both have issues, I guess, that can make them vulnerable to Mount Vernon Woods. 90% of the students that attend that school receive free and reduced meals, and that's our indicator of poverty. About 58 at Whitman Middle School. Many both have high percentage of children who English is their second language, so they are just learning that skill set. And then Whitman Middle School also has about 40% of those kids are from military families, which has another whole area
to it, the transiency of
it. Exactly. And so we are very excited. We are just beginning, so I don't have data or results yet, but just this week it all launched, and we are very excited. The grant, as I said, will cover for 2 years, and the United Community Ministries are managing that. They are going to have a community school coordinator at each of the schools, and they are going to be the point person to say, this is what is unique to this school. This is how we can help. And a big thing, particularly when we have big populations of newcomers, parents from different cultures often don't feel welcome in our schools.
That is true.
Not like some of us who are like there at the door from the day our kids get into school. They feel that, you know, the schools, I send my child there and they're going to get what they need. But they have to understand that this is a journey that together we're going to work on it. And community schools are going to create environments where they feel very, very comfortable being part of this partnership, this learning partnership, where they can come into our schools. They will learn about some of the things we were talking about in the pre-K programs. They will be learning this. They will be learning about health, mental wellness. What can I do to make the space in my home successful for my child to do their homework? Little things that add up to a lot. And so we are very excited to see where this community schools initiative is going to take us. It's just in its infancy, but I'm very excited about where it's going to go.
And this also is another example of where Fairfax County has been able to really benefit from looking at other programs around the country. And so one of the things we do as school board members, we go to the National School Board Association Conference, the NSBA, and it was actually back in about 2014 that there was a seminar that they ran modeling and profiling a school in San Diego. And so coming back from that conference and talking with my colleagues and sharing with them as a social worker that we know, again, if you can meet the other Maslow's hierarchy of need.
Right, that's how I always describe it. Maslow's, I do this,
yes,
Maslow's hierarchy of need. Down here, or they never get up here.
Yes, exactly. So if we can't meet the needs of a child when it comes to just food, shelter, the health care, then asking them to then come in and sit in a building for 7 hours to study and learn, go home and study and learn when there isn't the other basic human needs that we all have to have in order to then go on to more advanced tasks. It's going to be very hard to ask a child to be successful. And so often when we know that public education is one of the greatest avenues for anyone to have upward mobility in this wonderful United States. But you can't do that in a vacuum, especially when your family would have great need. And so this idea of bringing the services into the schools, because this is where the children are for 7 hours a day, while their parents might be working multiple jobs. They don't have the ability to leave work, pick up their child, take them over to a doctor's appointment, then bring them back. They're just, for many of our families, that is not a reality. And so looking at ways in which we can meet each and every child depending on where their family is. Community schools is another example of that. I'm very excited that in terms of the community schools, again, it's a shift in mindset. For so long, the Board of Supervisors and the school board worked in their separate silos. And we handled school issues and they handled other county service issues. And it was through the skipped work, again, bringing it back to the 6 years ago when we first embarked on this. It was saying, so much of what we're doing is overlapping in the way we serve Fairfax County residents and families. And so finding a central location, our elementary schools in particular are all based in the neighborhoods. And so a community school isn't just what happens during the school day, it's what happens after the school day. And again, providing other services to the family members, not just the school-age children, that will be the ultimate advancement in the community schools model, so that the families will also have their needs met, bringing in the services that are already out there, but to a place where people can access them, and that's what's so critical. And you know, Tammy and I both have sort of unusual backgrounds that most people don't expect. My parents were first-generation college. My father's parents were immigrants to this country and did not even have high school degrees, but they knew that getting an education was going to be an opportunity for their children, for what became for me as the grandchild. And so part of our passion is not at all about what our own individual children need. I have 3 sons. They've all recently graduated in the last 4 years. Tammy's 2 kids, similar in age. We do this work. We've loved serving on the board because we care so much about the greater community. And we look at our own family experiences and say, if public education could give so much to our parents, our grandparents, and now to us, how can we ensure that's there for so many other families and from countries where this is not the norm? You know, public education and all that it can offer is not something they're even familiar with. And so creating that welcoming environment that it's accessible to them, it's critical.
Absolutely.
And that's why so many families want to come here. That's why they want to come.
Yeah.
Right. You mentioned in your conversation how the community schools, and if the child comes to the door and they are hungry. So we have 2 programs that we realized so many of our children, when the summer months are out there, we partnered with the federal government, the USDA, and we have a summer feeds program, and that was in many of our elementary schools where kids could could come, and all you had to do is be a child in school age up to 18 years old, and you could get a free lunch every day of the summer. And what I love about that program is, in true Fairfax County Public Schools tradition, we went above and beyond. There were, they didn't just drop by. There were teachers that gave up their time in the summer and came and did book reading clubs. They did the crafts. They did opportunities to do, and none of this was paid. None of this was scheduled. It was out of the passion and compassion in their hearts about what they wanted to do, because they knew their kiddos would be there. They would be there on those front lines. And then another program that we're doing now is it's sponsored by the USDA, where all kids get a free breakfast and lunch, whether or not they qualify. This is in 18 of our schools. We're doing it to kind of stop the stigma and making certain that everybody gets breakfast in the classroom and everybody gets lunch. And as that program expands, I think it will it will be so beneficial, because we don't want any child to be hungry, because you can never be ready to learn if you're
Absolutely.
hungry.
And for, again, because we've talked about in a county of over 1 million people, that there are these pockets of poverty. There are areas in the county that don't see poverty at all. We have in the northern area of the county where Great Falls, McLaughlin, very low poverty numbers. I think Langley High School is at 1%. I mean, and yet then you can go to some of the other high schools that are in Tammy's district, much higher. And when you start to have 75% or more of the children identified as needing free or reduced lunch, meals and services, at that point, then for the other 25% of the students, as Tammy said, you don't want to start creating this identification of
who is poor
and who isn't, right?
Who is poor,
right? And I also wanted to spotlight the compassion piece and what a compassionate county we are. During the school year, through our parent volunteers, we have the Backpacks on Weekends program, where they send food home with the students over the weekend. We've got the clothing closets, where families will donate, and the parent volunteers then provide the clothing opportunities for, again, not just the students in the school, but for the family members. And people can come and that is a way that in Fairfax County, I think we're saying we are one Fairfax, and we do care about the residents in our community. But I want to leave on a really high note. Fairfax County Schools continues to be one of the premier systems in the entire country.
Absolutely.
Regardless of all these great programs we're talking about, that poverty rates have grown, but 70% of our students still go on to 4-year universities. About 90% will then, when you can add in the 2-year community colleges opportunities. So we're a high achieving school district that is just taking a real commitment to how we ensure each child gets to have that dream of being successful in schools.
We have a 90% on-time graduation rate. And one other area that I wanted to point out, we talk about parents and families who are new to our community or new to our school system. We now have an ombudsman, and the ombudsman is somebody that in Fairfax County Public Schools, you can contact that person and they can direct you to the service.
Like an information desk.
Yes.
Like I'm not sure who I should call, and this person says, "Tell me your problem, and I'll direct you to the right spot."
Absolutely.
Well, you ladies have been wonderful. I can't thank you enough for your time, because I know you spend a lot of time on these things, including Monday nights. So I really appreciate it. And I want to thank our audience for joining us tonight. This has been very informative about the great Fairfax County Public Schools.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yes, thank you.